Today we need to talk about Landry Jones, Eric Dungy, Phillip Nelson, and Johnny Manziel, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, we need to talk about Landry Jones, Eric Dungy, Phillip Nelson, and Johnny Football. Now, you'll see from the hoodie, I am a Dallas Renegades fan for a number of reasons. I was also, in a very fortunate position to be able to do an unboxing video about the Dallas Renegades on this channel where I, among other things, pulled out this hoodie. And when Bob Stoops became the head coach for that franchise, I picked them as my team, as Bob Stoops was, head coach of my favorite college football team, Oklahoma Sooners. Now, I find it interesting that on this inaugural weekend where we are going to welcome back Oliver Luck's XFL and not necessarily Vince McMahon's XFL, even as it still is Vince McMahon's XFL. Let me explain. One of the things, I don't know if it's cool or not, but one of the things that has happened since we've heard and learned that the XFL is going to relaunch is Vince McMahon said we're going to do it and then went away. He owns it. It is his league. He puts up all of the money for the teams and the 10-game schedule and has helped really set up Oliver Luck to do what Oliver Luck has done, which is say we are not that. And by that, he means Vince McMahon getting out to midfield with the XFL jacket on, talking about this is the XFL. We are not he hate me. We are not going to have a rugby scrum to start the game. We are not going to have scantily clad cheerleaders. We're not going to have The Rock on the mic or Jesse the Body Ventura on the mic. We are going to be a professional football league, not a competitor to the NFL, and certainly not necessarily trying to be its own thing. It really understands where it is in the landscape for its players. Personnel is very much guys that played in the NFL, guys that could play in the NFL, guys that want to get back to the NFL. I do not envision a quarterback being told he cannot go and play for an NFL team as we saw with the Alliance. Also, a major difference between the Alliance and the XFL is the XFL has given itself a year to develop its product, where the Alliance just kind of said, we're going to do this. Now, a couple of things that I want to get to before I focus on the Dallas Renegades and Johnny Football and whatnot. I found a few things interesting about this league, right? Because we all watched the first couple of games, or at least I did, right? Cardale Jones passed for nearly 300. We saw PJ Walker pass for over 300 as June Jones' quarterback. We saw Norm Chow in the box. We saw how important good quarterback play is going to be to this league, because even having a capable quarterback is the difference between not just a winning football franchise, for which I know that the guys want to have, but we're really about, can the XFL make it to 10 games and then sustain itself into the next season, if at all possible. You need competent quarterback play. And one of the things that has been pointed out is there aren't even 32 good NFL quarterbacks, right? How can you expect to have 10 even good ones in the XFL? And that's assuming everybody's healthy, and they are not. Landry Jones. I'll get back to that. But I also want to encourage folks, do not look at the XFL the way that you would look through the lens of college football or the NFL. College football has been around for 150 years. That's 150 years of development. The NFL has NFL 100 for a reason. It has been around for 100 years. You need a different lens. You need a different rubric. You don't go to a high school football game expecting to see an NFL product, right? The only difference is these are professionals, they are further developed, and they are on network television, Fox, ABC, and then cable television, ESPN, FS1 later. So they're getting scrutinized, right? But this league, which is for football fans, for the love of football, is for guys like me and women like you who really, really just want to see football played year-round and understand it's a violent sport. It's unhealthy to play. To ask folks to do it like you would an NHL season, a baseball season, an NBA season, is not just highly unlikely, it's also just highly irresponsible. So having an alternative like this one, I think, is helpful. I also think it does not necessarily gain the benefits that it thought it would by starting the week after the Super Bowl, because people are going to compare the first thing they see to the last thing they saw, which is why I'm asking folks to use a different rubric as they go into today's slate of games, as this upload went live at noon on Sunday. For those of you that are new to the channel, usually upload, I say, every single day, but also noon, 5, and 6, right, Central Time. So, that to say, Cardale Jones is a big boon for this league, even as he looks more equipped to play left tackle. P.J. Walker is a boon for this league. He's the winningest quarterback in Temple history, and he was that quarterback of those Matt Rule teams that launched Matt Rule to Baylor and then Matt Rule eventually to the Carolina Panthers. You can see what a big deal that is. It's why the salaries are such. On average, if a XFL player makes it through the entire 10-game season on the roster, it's going to make about $55,000. But the quarterbacks are being paid upward of the league minimum in the NFL, which is about $500,000, right? Because Oliver Luck had said, if we're going to pay people, we have to pay the quarterbacks, because they're not just the most important player on the football field. They're the most recognizable players of your league. They're going to be the people for which we all count on to be the spokespeople for this league. As a matter of fact, when ESPN Daily did their 20-minute bit about the XFL last week, the person Mina Kimes, host of ESPN Daily, was talking to was former Georgia quarterback Aaron Murray, who bounced around the NFL, became a broadcaster for CBS, and then he was asked by Marc Trestman, who is running the Tampa Bay franchise, would you please consider being a quarterback for me? And he is. And he doesn't even know if he wants to get back to the NFL. He just knows what I know, what you know. He loves football. He wants to play, right? And I think that that's what it should be. And I'm pulling for all of these guys because most of these guys are getting on their third, fourth, fifth chance. Sometimes their second chance, like Jordan Ta'amu, who you're going to see play for the St. Louis Battlehawks against my Dallas Renegades coming out of Ole Miss. I think he is the best prospect in this entire league because of his youth and what he did at Ole Miss. He's just an outstanding quarterback. I don't know why he didn't get more of a look in the NFL. I think he could be great, and you're going to get to see if I'm right against the Battlehawks. And that's another thing. Marquette King is punting for the Battlehawks. You'll remember him as the Oakland Raiders punter before John Gruden decided to cut him last year for reasons I still don't quite understand, because he was a lot of fun. Now, getting to the Dallas Renegades, you see Bob Stoops is having a good time, but you also see Daryl Johnston is his player personnel director, right? Director of player personnel. It's kind of like the general manager, although that title goes to Bob as head coach, and I think that's more about a pay thing than it is anything else. Same thing with Jim Zorn and Pepper Hamilton and Winston Moses and so forth and so on, right? Or Winston Moss, not Moses. I found it interesting that Landry Jones signed with this franchise and was the first signing for the entire league. That's what he goes down in history as. He's one of the best quarterbacks to come out of the University of Oklahoma ever, and I'm speaking more statistically than I am championships that he won, although he did win his fair share of Big 12 championships. He also did a stint for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I could see how you would want to build on him. And you also get other guys that I'm sure many of you might know, like Jeff Badette, who grad transferred from Kentucky to Oklahoma, and among other things, dropped a 4.27 40-yard dash at his pro day at OU, made the practice squad a couple of times for the Minnesota Vikings before being cut, and this is his second chance, and he's probably going to be the number one receiver for the Dallas Renegades, not just against the Battlehawks, but over the course of the season. On the other side of the ball, you got guys like Josh Hawkins coming out of East Carolina, who also has legitimate 4.4 speed and could very well play himself into the NFL next year. You also have Frank Alexander on the defensive line, but you got Phillip Nelson as the starting quarterback. It's announced Saturday. And I was thinking about that. Phillip Nelson came out of East Carolina, right? Passed for 67%, or completed 67% of his passes for like 2,600 yards as a senior there. And I want to say 2016 after transferring in 2015. That would be the year that Lincoln Riley left East Carolina to be the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Of course, 2 years later, he becomes the head coach at OU, and all he's done is go 36-6 as a head coach. But Phillip Nelson was the third guy on the depth chart, behind Landry Jones and Syracuse quarterback Eric Dungey. And I always liked Dungey, right? He's just a lot of fun out there. Syracuse running around like a slingshot, just kind of seeking who he could throw a football to and who he's going to get tortured by and destroyed by. And he might go for 300. He might go for 135. but he's not going to play, we think, against the Battlehawks. And Phillip Nelson's going to be the starter because of a hamstring issue that he's had since he first got to Dallas. And of course, Landry Jones had a knee injury, but he was cleared to play. But according to Bob Stoops and the Renegades, he just did not have enough reps throughout practice for them to feel comfortable as the day one starter. So now we have Phillip Nelson. And whether or not he's a good quarterback, or a good enough quarterback, I should say, is going to really affect this league, because it's going to be everybody's first perception of the Dallas Renegades, right? And we've seen what other quarterbacks have not been able to do has been a referendum on the league. Offensive line play is not going to be very good. Defensive line play is not going to be very good, though we did see the Houston Roughnecks create a really great pass rush on Saturday. I thought about, where's Johnny Manziel in all of this? Where's Johnny Football? And it turns out Johnny Football did want to play in the XFL. He thought he might be a good fit for June Jones and the Houston Roughnecks. And it was put to Daryl Johnston, who, as I mentioned, is Director of Player Personnel for the Dallas Renegades. And he had been the general manager for the San Antonio Commanders in the Alliance. And he said then, as he said now, I passed on him. And I'd pass on him again, just as I have, because I believe that the chemistry of the locker room is so utterly dependent on the quarterback, both offensively and defensively, that I don't want a guy in there that I can't trust. I don't want a guy in there who's got the kind of baggage that Johnny Manziel has. And we all know the baggage that he has. Now, the Memphis Express ended up signing him. He passed for 61 yards and an interception in his time there. But Johnny Manziel's football ability does not outweigh his past transgressions. And I thought that was interesting, because that's you laying down a marker. Oliver Luck obviously does not support other teams signing Johnny Manziel. Otherwise, they would have done that already. Because, as I said, quarterback play is going to be essential to the success of your league, because that's how the layperson sees popularity in a league. And it's also how we judge how good a football team is, right? There's a reason why traditionally the guy that wins the Heisman Trophy is quarterback, right? Doesn't matter that Chase Young was the best player in college football last year. It matters that Joe Burrow had the best season of a quarterback ever, right? Same thing with Jalen Hurts. He wasn't even the best player on his own team. That was CeeDee Lamb, but CeeDee Lamb didn't get any Heisman votes. Jalen Hurts finished second. Justin Fields and Chase Young made the Heisman finalist ballot. Justin Fields, we could make an argument, wasn't as essential to Ohio State's success as Chase Young. We don't need to, but that's kind of where I'm going. We could point out that Johnny Manziel was on the same football team as Mike Evans. And Mike Evans has done nothing but be an all-pro caliber wide receiver in the NFL. Johnny Manziel has been washed out, didn't make it in the Canadian Football League, didn't make it in the Alliance, won't have an opportunity to make it in the XFL, even as he's trying to play football. And I don't begrudge him that. Maybe he'll have a Ryan Leaf type of existence down the line. But there is a reason as to why Johnny Manziel is not playing in the XFL. And it's because the XFL has made a commitment to class. They don't want anybody who has even been near the wrong side of class being in their league. Though they have Sean Oakman on the defensive line for the Los Angeles Wildcats. Speaking of Los Angeles Wildcats, Jordan Smallwood had a great game. Didn't have the best game of any receiver, that'd be Spruce, but he had a great game, and he looks like one of those brick outhouses that the boomers and Gen Xers like to talk about. But I thought this was an interesting marker to lay down, because Sean Oakman obviously is not too much of a threat to your class. Otherwise, you would not have him started on somebody's defensive line, but he does not play quarterback either. The days of having a Kenny Stabler in your league to get it up and going, they're coming back to bite you. Even a Baker Mayfield, who is charismatic and whom I love, there are enough people that don't like him for it to be effective. And as an upstart league, as a league that is just trying to make it from one week to the other and finish out this season, I do not blame Oliver Luck, Daryl Johnston, or any of the other teams in this league, the New York Guardians, the Tampa Vipers, the DC Defenders. Nobody in this league I blame for not wanting to take a chance on a guy like Johnny Manziel, because the collective is much more important. And that's what most football coaches would tell you about any football team. No one individual is more important than the team. And I think the XFL, sticking to that mandate, rightly or wrongly, it's going to lead into some success. Because what we know about spring football leagues is they die because of two things: mismanagement and running out of money. Vince McMahon has a lot of money. Oliver Luck is a great sports administrator, a great manager. I, like many of you watching this video, hope the XFL succeeds. All right, that's it for me. Deuce.